Hi, I'm James Williamson. I come from Wiley, which is, so I come from a publishing house background, so I'm going to talk to you about annotation from that arena. We do textbooks, medical journals, and just general, like for dummies and cookbooks and things. So when I first started this process and I was talking to colleagues about what they might like to see in annotation, I got, well, we do annotated bibliographies and that's all you need to know. And that's not all you need to know. So we tried to explain to them what we were looking for here, and that's when we started to get more information from them about, oh, well, now that we know what you're talking about, here's what we'd like to see improved for errata in journals, or the way footnotes are handled, or even the way that the reader experience in higher educational publishing is handled. So we started talking about things about how our current situation is somewhat limited and sometimes involves third parties rather than our own technology. They weren't a big fan. We also talked about some of the limits of our third-party e-readers and for everyday reader experiences with their reading. The limitations of journals, which were talked about before. Some higher ed publishing, which I'll get into detail about in a little while. And the Contact Us button as the only form of annotation in some of the current reading environments. We'll talk about that in a second. So, also during the authoring process, we're going to talk about that, how annotation is involved there. So, moving through, the current user experience, when you have two different e-reading systems, they don't necessarily interact with each other. So if you make a note in one, it doesn't port over to the other automatically. It's problematic for some readers. Other readers have a little pet peeve about the way that the systems do interact between users when comments are transported. And some have no functionality at all to allow readers to make notes or highlight or annotate their systems at all, which can be frustrating depending on the topic that you're reading. If it's fiction, you might not care, but if you're doing something a little more technical or reading a textbook, you probably want to make notes on it. You want your e-reading experience to at least be up to par with a pen and paper that you can take notes in your textbook. So, just the first comment here is, here's a version of iBook. You take a highlight, you make a note, you then go and you get a Kindle and switch over. Your note is no longer available, so you have to find the text you were talking about before, highlight it again, and make the same note. A little pet peeve that we get through our contact button all the time from readers is, well, I'm reading a fiction book and it says 1,000 people commented on this word that doesn't really matter to me. Why is it highlight? There's a little note there that says, you can turn this off, but just when we're talking about standards, can we just make it an on-off option here? So we don't have to send them the notes on how to turn this off so it doesn't interrupt their reading experience. Yeah, we hear about it all the time. So into our Wiley Online Library. Currently, this is for science, technical, medical journals. It doesn't have a lot of annotation functionality currently. There's no way to highlight, there's no way to add notes when reading in the current location. There are some areas where you can make notes, where you can see annotations. They involve footnotes that have direct links, so it jumps directly to the footnote. There are other areas which need a little bit of help. For example, errata. When you have text, you have the article, and you have another publication that comes out later that has all of the errors that you want to fix. They don't link the errata to the specific area where the error is. It just links you directly from the article to the errata page. So it's a very broad subject matter. So direct linking here would be super helpful from what we gather. This is an example of some of our reading experience. You can see the footnotes there and how they connect directly to the footnote that you're referring to. Publication history as well shows you some information about the authors and the dates of how the publication progressed. We also have some third-party areas within our Wiley Online Library. There's social media tracking things, so you can see where your article was mentioned in blogs or on Facebook or posts and how it was mentioned, what part of the article is tracked. That's a great resource. It's also done outside of our publication so we don't have much access to it. There's also Cite You Like, which tracks for referencing purposes, but again, it's not something that we handle. It's from a third-party vendor. Some topics that we just talked about briefly about academic journals. Onto the Contact Us button. So currently, the only way we really have to annotate these things is the Contact Us button. So the reader clicks Contact Us, it sends that message to the publisher. The publisher then curates all of these, decides which are worthwhile to send on to the organization that does the publishing of the journal. The journal then takes these and curates again, sometimes, picks them, may or may not send them to a next round of the journal, which can be up to 2 years later. So as you can see, for scholarly discussion, 2 years is a little bit slow when it comes to cancer research. Now onto our authoring process. Originally, we started out with tear sheets, the original annotation, which is taking 2 textbooks, ripping out all of the pages, gluing them front and back to larger pieces of paper. The author then draws lines and writes what they want to change for the next version. There's a page. We then moved on to Word, which we use track changes. It highlights colors. You can see all of the various speakers and their inline queries, their responses to each other. We then moved from there to when the printed page comes back from the compositor. He has ways of talking to each other back and forth there using notes, and also the note and comment features within PDF itself. We also created some stamps, as you can see here, for the publishers who like to use the old school copy editing notation marks. Let's see. So the authoring tool is here. It allows for interaction, but not necessarily simultaneous interaction. It is a speedier process when we do it with PDF because we used to have to mail it back and forth. Now it's email. However, when we come up with better authoring tools that are coming in the future, or actually some are currently available, it allows for simultaneous interaction with multiple users using it at the same time. You don't have to worry as much about version control. The system will handle it itself rather than emailing around and having to manually input the changes each person has made. Coming soon for us in the higher ed experience is a vastly improved area. We currently, as I was saying with Wiley Online Library, don't have much by way of highlighter note taking except for outside parties. However, this summer we're going to be releasing a new program which allows for a lot more annotation functionality. Here is what it's going to look like a bit. So as you can see, there are highlight functionalities. There are ways to add notes. You can mark things up for discussion. It goes to a field which looks similar to Facebook, where you can kind of comment back and forth with each other, have open discussion. You can bookmark pages, like them, comment on anything down to the word level. Anything from map areas to entire maps to graphics or tables. During the test-taking area, you can annotate how confident you are in the questions you may be asked during the process of the learning experience before you submit your question, and it gives you the answer and tells you whether you're right or wrong, so you can decide whether you should or should not be as confident as you are. There's also a way to track all of the annotations that you have already made, and it categorizes them by the assignment or the bookmark or how you added it or if it's a note. Here's an example of the comment stream that goes on between the users. There's also a way within that to tag whether you believe, or sorry, not whether you believe, who you want to have a discussion with. It can be one-on-one between you and the professor or you and another student. The annotation can go out to any subset, a professor and a working group amongst the students, or to the entire course using the test or the ebook. There's also a way for the professors to then see what or track the results and the process that the students are going through, how they're progressing, and see whether there are areas that need to be referred back to for a better learning experience, to have more discussion so that there can be better understanding. So we're hoping that the changes will promote some scholarly discussion and help gauge the student understanding of the topics for a better learning experience. Also, the new application will allow for portability between devices. So if you have Wiley Learning Environment installed on your PC as well as your iPad, the notes will carry back and forth, and you can use it in all areas, and you won't lose any of the discussion thread when you log on to one and lose it when you log on to the other. I'm running out of time, sorry. That's the academic publishing we talked about before, so I'll skip over that. And just the last three areas that we want to talk about, or hopefully some of you will talk about, are curation, storage and retention, what happens to edited or deleted content, and what happens to the annotations there, or for content when it goes out of print, where are those annotations stored, how are they stored, and who's responsible for the storage area of them when you're not actually making any more money off of the print. And that's everything that I have. Thank you. I'll leave it for you. Yeah.
How do you get the browser?
Just a short question. Are you using, or maybe I just missed it, any standards for the annotations you're
currently, no. We didn't really propose any standards, just areas to talk about within it. As we are developing some of our own technology there, it would be nice to have a standard to refer back to, so we don't have to work later to create the standard technology.